dust bunnies. Howard Krell was mean. It wasn't just a mean that only came out when someone annoyed him, it was the kind that had attached itself to him and never let go. He was constantly complaining about something. He would seem to go out of his way to show the world that he was indeed the meanest man who ever lived. His housekeeper, Agnes Quill, only continued to clean up after him every other day because the money was good. She put up with his snide remarks and comments that occasionally hurt her. She realized that he was just a lonely old man with no family and no friends.
"You didn't polish the silverware this week, Miss Quill,"
he would say. "I never use the silverware," she would tell him.
"That isn't the point," he would counter. "I pay you to do a job, something that you don't do very well, and I expect you to do the job."
"Well," she would say, "if you don't think that my performance in my duties is up to par, perhaps you should find someone else to take my place." She knew that he would never fire her for any reason. No one else would ever put up with him. His home was not very large, sitting on about a half of an acre of land, completely fenced in, and only one story. There was a large front room, a small kitchen, one bedroom, and one bath. The large walk-in closet was situated between the bedroom and the bathroom. The floors were all hardwood, with the exception of the tile work in the kitchen and bathroom. All in all, according to Agnes, it was a very nice house in which she did her best to keep clean. Howard was never a messy person, she would tell her friends, but he always seemed to go out of his way to make extra work for her. He would eat 2 olives from the jar, putting them on a plate and then putting the plate in the sink. He would then fix a sandwich and dirty another plate. He would continue to do this until the sink was full of dishes. Another time, she told her husband, he changed his clothes 5 different times in one day, so that she would have to do the laundry. "So why don't you just quit?" Mr. Quill had asked. "I don't know," she answered. "Lord knows if we need the extra money."
Is it really worth the aggravation?"
"I just think that he is so lonely that he doesn't know that he's lonely," she told him.
"All right, I suppose that you know best," he told her before returning to his newspaper. She often wondered why she didn't quit herself, making up excuses to stay. The $400 a week that he paid her was certainly at the top of the list, but there were days where even the money did not outweigh the insults. "How could anyone marry such a sloppy housekeeper as you? Maybe if you dyed your hair, you would be more attractive. Looks like you have gained some weight."
Most of the time, she would overlook the jabs and the comments about her appearance or the way she cleaned. She would simply continue to work, not paying attention to anything the old man was saying to her.
"You don't really deserve the money that I'm paying you," he would say on Friday afternoon. "But I suppose you are expecting it."
Since her husband had become disabled and the monthly cheque was not nearly enough to live on, the money had indeed come in handy. It paid the bills and allowed them to eat on a regular basis. She never knew where the money had come from that the old man paid her with, only that he had retired from business. Each week she was given 8 crisp new £50 notes. And yet the insults continued. It was 1 week before Christmas that the real trouble began.
"Miss Quill!"
Howard yelled.
"Do you like your position here?"
She thought a moment before answering and said, "No, sir, not particularly."
"Then why the hell do you stay?"
"Well, it seems to me that you are in dire need of something in the way of company, and since you pay me for my services as a housekeeper, I do my best to tolerate you," she told him. He smirked and said,
You tolerate me. I tolerate you, dear woman, your sloppiness and the horrible way that you keep my house.
Well, exactly what are you talking about?
She asked, getting angrier by the minute. Dust bunnies, he said.
Where?
I was sitting on my back porch last night after you left, after you had done your supposed cleaning, and I saw it clear as day.
Perhaps it blew in from the neighbour's place, she explained.
Perhaps, he agreed, but it was still there on my porch, on my property. You should have made sure that all of the dust bunnies were gone.
The old man had no pets, and Agnes was always sure to dust everything off, so the notion of a dust bunny floating around on the old man's porch seemed incredible to her. I will do my best, she told him, walking toward the kitchen to wash the sink full of dishes that he had managed to use just that morning.
Your best, he yelled. Only losers do their best.
2 days later, he started in on her again.
Damn woman, he began. You still don't know how to use a dust mop, do you?
What are you talking about? She asked as she stopped the vacuum cleaner.
More dust bunnies, he bellowed. There were 3 of them on the porch last night, and there was one right here near my chair.
Agnes looked around, but couldn't see anything. I suppose that they left during the night, she told him.
Don't be impertinent, he said.
Well, sir, she said, motioning around the room, there does not appear to be any dust bunnies now.
The old man was speechless, staring at the woman in front of him as she waved her arms around.
Maybe they're hiding from you, she said.
Damn it, woman! I am not going insane, he yelled again.
Going insane? I think that you passed insanity a long time ago, she yelled back.
You watch what you are saying!
Agnes fell silent. It was the first time in the 4 years that she had been working for the old man that she managed to find her voice and say something mean to him. She smiled and said, Oh, maybe the dust bunnies are gathering together.
Stop it,
he said quietly. You know, I hear that they tend to multiply.
Stop it, he said a little louder.
Until they overrun the entire house.
Shut up!
Until there are so many, they cover you up and eat you alive.
Quiet!
So that one day, all I will have to do is vacuum up a huge pile of dust, which will be you.
Get out of my house, he boomed.
Oh, that is exactly what I am going to do, she yelled back. He watched her gather her things, stomp out the door and leave. He heard her car start and drive away.
Good riddance, he muttered. Who needs her?
He managed to raise his old body up from the easy chair, grabbing his cane and making his way out of the French doors leading to his porch. He sat in the one lone chair that was on his patio and watched the blue sky of the afternoon and the clouds that rolled lazily by.
I'm happy, he said aloud, no matter what everyone may say.
The dust bunny blew across his feet, making him jump with a start. He watched the small ball of hair and dust roll around the patio as if performing a small dance for the old man. He felt the wind against his cheeks and knew that it was this phenomenon that was controlling the small pile of fur. Until the dust bunny stopped directly in front of him. His brow furrowed. He could still feel the wind, but contrary to all the laws of science, the dust bunny remained still. He thought if the thing had eyes, it would be staring at him.
You can get out of my house too,
he told it, shaking his cane at it. As if the dust and dirt had heard him, it slowly rolled away towards the grass of his yard just beyond the patio. 3 days before Christmas, at 9 in the morning, when Agnes had decided to try and get a little more sleep in, the phone rang.
Where the hell are you? Sleepily, she said,
Mr. Krell?
Who the hell do you think will be calling you?
he asked, his voice harsh.
I pay you to be here at my home promptly at 8 in the morning. It is now just past 9, and it sounds to me like you are still sleeping.
Well, as a matter of fact, I was,
she answered.
Why aren't you here getting rid of the dirt?
He asked.
You fired me,
She said.
No, dear woman, you quit.
He reminded her.
Since I did not accept your notice, I expect you to be here.
Pouring herself a cup of coffee, she took a sip and said,
Mr. Krell, for 4 years now, I have had to put up with your bullshit.
Such language!
Oh, shut the fuck up!
She interrupted him loudly. In a much sweeter tone, she said,
I will not do it anymore. I would rather work at the worst fast food restaurant I can find, cleaning out toilets and to come back to work for you.
Well, now look here.
He began, but was cut off again.
Find some other woman who will put up with you,
Agnes said, and hung up the phone. Oh, you don't understand, Howard Krell pleaded, a touch of fear in his voice. It's the dust bunnies! He realised that he was talking to no one. He gently hung up the phone and sat down heavily in his easy chair. You just wait, he said, pointing to the table that held his television set. I will get her back. Even if I have to double her salary, she will take care of you. He counted 6 separate dust bunnies, all of them sitting under the table, motionless. He felt that this time they did have eyes, all of them staring at him and full of hatred. Mrs. Quill was busy the day before Christmas. There was always so much cooking and prepping that had to be done. This year, they had managed to get a 14-pound turkey along with all the trimmings. All 3 of their children would be able to make it to their home for Christmas dinner. Even the oldest one was able to get time off from the police department, and his wife, who had just recently had the first grandchild of the family, was able to make it despite the health problems that she had to endure during her pregnancy. Both the mother and child were healthy, and this made Mrs. Quill joyous beyond belief. She hummed a Christmas song as she prepared the sweet potatoes for her famous casserole and checked on the pie that was baking in the oven. She was truly grateful for all the things that had happened since hanging up on Mr. Krell after telling him where to go. It's only part-time, and it is strictly under the table, but at least I won't feel like an invalid, her husband had told her. He had returned from a luncheon with a friend who offered him a job that was perfect for him. A few hours later, she was offered a position at a local store that was in desperate need of a manager. While the money wasn't nearly as much as Howard Krell had paid her, it, along with the pay that her husband would get, would be enough for them to survive. The phone rang.
Merry Christmas from the Krell family,
she answered in her happy voice.
Please don't hang up, Miss Quill,
Howard said, his voice a whisper.
Mr. Krell,
she said, her tone of voice changed to annoyance.
I have told you time and again that I am married, so please call me Mrs. Quill.
Yes, Mrs. Quill, I will,
he said. She looked down at the phone and was concerned. This did not sound like the grumpy and mean old man which she told off.
Mr. Krell, was there something wrong?
She asked.
Yes, Mrs. Quill,
he said, the fear growing in his voice.
There is something very wrong. It's the dust bunnies.
What about them?
She asked, the concern leaving her voice.
There are more of them, many more. They are multiplying.
Mr. Krell,
she said, her tone harsh.
Tomorrow is Christmas. My family is coming and we are going to sit down and celebrate. And there is nothing that you can say that will change that fact. Now, if you don't mind...
1,000,
he said.
I'm sorry?
I will pay you 1,000 pounds if you will come over right now and rid this house of these things.
Now, She was concerned again.
Mr. Krell, she said, you could do it yourself. The dust mop is in the hall closet.
They won't let me near the closet. I haven't been able to leave my chair for days,
he told her.
Oh, what are you babbling about?
The damn dust bunnies,
he said.
They hate me, and I think they are going to kill me.
Mr. Krell,
she said with a sigh.
If you really need someone to come over and dust for you, call a service.
I have, but no one will come out,
he said, his voice a little higher pitched.
Well, of course not. It's Christmas,
she informed him.
Look, I tell you what, after I have my visit with my family tomorrow, I will come over and dust for you, but it will cost you £2,000.
Please,
he said.
I will give you £3,000 if you can come over tonight.
Well, I still have a lot of baking to do.
I'm begging you, Mrs. Quill, please, before they get me.
She could hear the fear in his voice rising to a crescendo. Her heart went out to the lonely man, thinking that maybe this was his way of trying to get her to invite him to her house for Christmas.
I have the cash right now,
he said.
Make it £5,000, but you have to come tonight.
All right, Mr. Krell, she finally said. I will be there in about an hour.
No,
he yelled.
An hour and it may be too late. The dust bunnies are starting to grow. They're getting bigger. There are more of them than there was when I first called you.
Mr. Krell, I will be there after my pie is done baking, she explained.
Damn the pie,
he screamed.
I need you, Mrs. Quill, please.
In an hour,
she said, and hung up the phone. Mr. Howard Krell looked at the table, tears in his eyes as he replaced the receiver. He closed his eyes, afraid to look around the room. The dust bunnies had kept multiplying, covering every inch of the hardwood floor. Krell could see the larger ones standing in the hallway by the closet, guarding the dust mop and vacuum. There were more outside on the patio, staring in through the French doors, not moving despite the wind.
Please, don't,
Krell pleaded. He watched as the dust carpet began to move towards him. He saw the first one lazily begin to climb onto his foot. The larger ones, now standing 6 and 7 feet tall, began to move down the hallway towards the frightened man. Bits of their tops were scraping the ceiling and hanging, creating smaller versions that began to move along the walls. For the first time, Krell screamed. Ah! Mrs. Quill had arrived about 2 hours later. She knocked on the door and, not hearing anything from inside, opened it. A wave of dust billowed out and made her cough and sneeze.
Oh, dear me,
she said. As she walked across the front room floor, she could see her footprints in the dust. She looked and saw the large pile of dust on the chair that Krell usually sat in.
Well, he wasn't kidding about all the dust, she said to herself. Mr. Krell, she called out, but there was no reply. With a shrug, she made her way to the closet and retrieved the vacuum. Starting in the bedroom, she managed to make her way through the house in about 15 minutes. She stared at the large dust pile on the chair. Naturally, Mr. Krell, she said aloud. You put perfectly clean dishes in the sink. Now you fill your chair up with dust. With only a few swipes of the vacuum, the dust was gone. She put the vacuum away and was getting ready to leave when she noticed a small bundle of money on top of the television. Her name was written on a tag. 5,000, she muttered as she placed the money into her pocketbook. Just before she closed the door, she called out, Merry Christmas, Mr. Krell! The lone dust bunny that had been under the chair rolled out into the middle of the floor and stopped,
seeming to look over the work that Mrs. Quill had done. Satisfied, it rolled towards the French door, which opened. The dust bunny scattered itself into the winds. Howard Krell was never heard from again.
Epilogue. The butler did it.